Hello.
Hello, D. Good
Can you
morning.
hear me?
Loud and
Okay.
clear.
I'm using this for the first time, so I wasn't sure if I did it right.
I feel honored that I get a microphone. I get a snazzy microphone. You chose me to open with. That's great. I love that.
How are you? How's your morning?
Yeah, fantastic. I was up at 4:30 this morning getting ready for a podcast with Here for the Truth Boys, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
great. So I did that this morning and then had a client session in between, just had a cup of tea and a cookie. I'm here with you, which I'm super
Wow.
excited to be here. How's
Yeah.
your morning been? How have you been? How's your sessions gone this morning? How did you start your day?
Yeah, my morning's been good. I like to have a clear morning before I do these things because I really like to be centered. I'm not at your level yet, so where I can where I can handle a lot.
Oh, for me, D, there is no level. For me, like human design wise, have you ever done your human design?
I'm new to that stuff, so
Yeah, right, right. Cool, cool,
mm.
cool. Like for me in human design, I'm fully defined. So I have four motors that I can
Wow.
rely on. So I've got energy for days. So I would never expect anybody to even want to be like me. It can be important just to do whatever it is that you want to do and just rest, right? Have a
Yeah.
client session, take a nap. Awesome. You do whatever it is you need to do, right?
That's cool. Well, I was actually going to get you to talk about what it is that you do because I don't fully comprehend it, and you probably don't even yourself because it's just so unique and it's constantly changing, I guess, depending on what you're going through. But I have been watching a lot of your content in the last few days, and I find watching you and watching you talk, I can see that you've definitely cleared out a lot of stuff. And you're quite a clean slate in the
Mm,
sense that when you speak, it just flows.
mm,
And I realized watching you how much our body language and the way we speak shows parts of ourselves that still need, I guess, healing or transmuting is probably a better word to say. And what I really love about you is you're very authentic. I can feel that. So, yeah, I feel very honored to have you here and to have your wisdom. Tell us about what is it that you do? Can you describe your work in some way?
Ah, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I love that. All getting all blushed and flushed here about it. I guess the question is really important because
Mhm.
I feel that like when you come from a world of like the 9 to 5 and the corporate and credentials, you become your credential. Like when I first started, I was trained in core energetics. Actually, even before then, I worked in
Mhm.
corporate as a project manager slash systems analyst slash jack of all trades, master of a few. So I guess what I really do in one word, it would be help you remember, well, a few words would be help you remember who you really are.
Mm.
And then to get to that point is so unique for every individual that it requires an individual tailored journey. So I use multiples of technologies to guide you back home into yourself
Mhm.
instead of the temptation to look outside of yourself. I go, no, hey, look, I've got some answers for you, but all these answers, I'm just going to point you back into you. And I'll do that with compassion, love, sometimes directness and assertiveness. But most of
Mhm.
the time, it just needs space and compassion. So you could also say, I hold a deep space, I hold a deep presence. I can also be
Mm.
quite cynical and controversial and critical. But I think in all of it, it is, and where we go with credentials and wanting to work with people is their energy. And it's like you see them show up, like, or someone recommends them to you, and you just go
Mm.
check them out instead of looking at their credentials and going, oh, where are they? What's this? What have they done? What have they studied? And we've quite clearly seen over the past couple of years that credentials and lab coats really don't amount for much, right? So I guess that's
Mhm.
a kind of sideways way of answering your question. But did you get the answer?
I did.
Yeah, great.
That was good. A good way to explain it. I was a little bit shocked, I must admit, that your content hasn't gone viral. You're quite a hidden gem.
Mm,
But when I think about it, a lot of the things you talk about, and there was a video that I listened to about you explaining how a lot of these therapies where they fail is that the lack of embodiment. And I can see that you really emphasize that and you bring that to the table.
Mm.
And then in that moment, I understood why maybe you haven't gone viral yet. And I think that's because people would really struggle with that process because it's quite confronting, I guess. I don't know.
No, you do know. You do
Yeah.
know, D. Like
Yeah.
it is confronting.
Yeah.
Like any form of embodied truth that someone doesn't have the internal bandwidth to deal with will push them into overwhelm. And then in that overwhelm, they'll go to whatever survival patterns that they need to go to, which can be
Mm,
going into their head or hunkering down into what they already know or looking for rules or ways to criticize what they've heard so it doesn't fit inside their rule kit. So,
mm,
and also in the context of divine magic and divinity, is that some things require limitation. Like
mm,
in the context of manifestation, like a baby that learns manifestation. Can you imagine a 5 year old that learns like manifestation that's unlimited, right? And I think that there's still adults roaming around on earth right now that still have this little 5 year old guiding their manifestation. And you're going to have the limiters. There's limiters. There's beings beyond the veil which limit what can come through onto the earth. And for me, that's part of my why I'm not allowed to go viral right now. The world's not ready, or I'm not ready. There's something that's still cooking in the kitchen of divinity. It's in the
mm.
womb space of divinity. I was like, it's not ready to be birthed yet. You know, John, maybe you're just in the first trimester of where I am right now in this journey and just chill in the womb, soak up some of that fluid and some of that umbilical cord before you need to go be thrust out into the world.
Yeah, I totally feel that what you're saying.
Mm.
And I can see that too. And
Mm.
I can relate in a certain way because how this all started was in the lockdowns and the last few years, I started to release content about finding ways around that and about exposing governments and authorities and how like it's just illegitimate, all that kind of stuff. And that all went viral. But when I started to actually see deeper than that and where that was the collective shadow. And I started to post about how, hang on a minute, guys, they're just mirroring our disempowerment. And that content did not go very far.
Right? And
Yeah.
and for me, that's where a lot of humanity is right now. I actually spoke about this on the Here for the Truth podcast as well.
Mm,
It's where some people just aren't ready yet, and that's okay. And they may never, ever, ever be ready, right? But as long as we keep on doing our thing and speaking our truth, sometimes those seeds land a decade from now, right?
mm,
Sometimes these seeds may never land. But as long as we're staying true to ourselves, we'll always get what's correct for us, whatever's
mm,
coming through. And the mirroring piece, what I find is if someone hasn't really properly dealt with their family of origin dynamics, like their mummy and daddy issues, they'll always externalize these issues onto an authority, whether it's a government or the tax department or somebody else. There's always something that, oh, my mummy and daddy need to change to make me feel safe. It's like, well, maybe. And what are you not taking responsibility and ownership of your life? Where are you in denial that your reality is not where you think it could be in your alignment with who you are?
mm, yeah. Well said.
Thank you.
So when I was listening to your first podcast with the Here for
Here,
Truth,
here for the truth. Yeah.
you mentioned you worked in Hillsong.
Yes.
So was that just a job or were you aligned with that religion or?
Ah, great question, D. So my family, we've been jumping between churches for most of my life. Like
Mhm.
actually even before then, I don't know if you're familiar with Sai Baba, but he was like a cult leader. I think you could call anything a cult these days
Mhm.
in India. And my dad followed him, and my mum was raised a Christian. But we ended up going over to India for a while and spent some time in like a Sai Baba ashrami place. That was my first
Mm.
experience of seeing possession for the first time at 8 years old. But
Wow.
then we kind of jumped around between like Baptist churches and Presbyterian churches, and then all of a sudden Hillsong came on the scene. It used to be known as Hills Christian Life Center before them. And I was also going to a private school out in Dural. You know Dural, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, Dural. And friends of the family, friends of friends at the school introduced us to that church. And one of the fathers of these friends said, John might be interested to come onto the tech crew for Hillsong cameras and things. So I just started there. I was going along like every other Sunday, just like holding cables originally, like as the cameras would run around and shoot the preacher. And then from there, it progressed. I was just naturally gifted to do technical work. So then I
Mm.
migrated into operating cameras, one of the youngest camera operators there. Then I moved into vision switching and directing, one of the youngest vision switchers and directors there. Then they went to multi-camera shoots, changed their name, a whole bunch of other stuff. And I just did it because I just enjoyed the technical side. Like I love directing people who are like twice and thrice my age, telling them what to do. I love the artistic component. Um, but as for the sermons and the like, I just see the show. Like I just saw the show for what it was and the money that exchanged hands through there and people that were suffering that would still put money in the buckets, even though I knew that their relationship life, their family life was just distressed. So I left that when I knew I could see the writing was on the wall that this is not real. It's not real. It's not
Mm.
authentic.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. And so when it comes to religion, I guess that was a good exposure for you in terms of how you see religion impacts people and
Yeah, it certainly was layered. I
mm,
mean, my dad is against religion, but he also has the religious vibe of the black and white thinking that can come from religion.
mm,
And then my mum still adheres to the Christian faith. And again, turning to the Bible for things which I know she has their own internal power to sort out.
mm,
So like my experience of religion was again, it was something that you could place outside of yourself and authority. So you didn't have to face the curiosity and the unknown of your own life.
mm,
Which if you're not willing to take responsibility for your life, religion works great. Like
mm,
it's the perfect lock and key to go into that trauma injury of not wanting to take responsibility for your own life.
mm. It's interesting because I've just gotten into my gene keys and I have 22 and 47.
Nice.
Yeah. And I've been reading about them, and it does mention how religion is like a bit of a safety net.
It really is.
So
What else have you learned about your gene keys? Like what's
I'm still getting into it, but I feel from what I've read so far, having 22 is pretty big.
it is grace, like graciousness.
Yeah.
It's such a potent key, D. So you've read it right now, or you've listened to some of the audios. Like how have you ingested?
So I've listened to the audios and I've been reading it, but I
Oh,
feel
great.
like every time I read it and reread it, there's like levels of understanding.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
that 47th gene key has triggered me in some way.
Which
Like
we're going go yeah, speak more about that.
that one is oppression.
Repression, yeah.
Yeah. And it talks about the karma,
Mhm.
but then it talks about how there's a deep-rooted fear with that. And I
Mm,
feel like that's been a very big recurring theme in my life where I've had deep-rooted fears and I don't know where they come from. But reading this gene key, I've kind of had an understanding and awareness of that. And I feel that fear in me and I'm trying to work through it.
mm,
And I'm at that point where I'm like, I'm trying not to force it, but I'm not trying to resist it either. I'm trying to surrender into it. And it's just so hard.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. I've got something for you if you're open to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great. So does it feel like fear or is it more terror?
Probably terror.
Yeah, beautiful. So terror, and in the context of the five personality patterns,
Mm,
terror is a leaving pattern, survival pattern. So
okay.
when you start to feel just the inklings of terror, there can be your body will want to leave, your spirit will want to leave your body. And you
Okay.
might go into your head, you might go over here, you might go over like almost like an astral projecting yourself, like somewhere else. Or and you lose connection with your body. Your hands can go quite cold, your feet can go quite cold. But terror, yeah, deep breath. Terror terror can be one of those things that actually stops people from taking responsibility for their life,
Mm.
because it's the dominant injury that I see in the collective right now, where it's the simultaneous responsibility to exist and then the avoidance of that responsibility. So it's a pre-verbal injury. So sometimes you don't have the words for it, but you know the sensation exists. And then body work wise, what I tend to do with someone to help them go into their terror if they don't have a natural accessibility for it, first of all, is to lie them down. Lying them down automatically puts your body in like a regressive state, so it can go younger. It can take the body into a younger state. Most people hold a lot of terror in their jaw, like, and they have like they sometimes like they clench their teeth or grind their teeth, or they
Funny you
have
say that. I could feel all this tightening here last night. Sorry, I just had to
no, no,
interject.
no, 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 no. Sorry, like I love that. It's great. Please interrupt. So yeah, you can actually push quite hard on the jaw, and sometimes quite softly, depending on how sensitive your jaw is. And
Mm.
terror will start to come out of the eyes. So as someone with terror, I'm usually like leaning over them and pushing on their jaw and say, just stay with me, because the body wants to disassociate. You need somebody else to ground you in the terror.
Mm.
So just stay with me and scream and yell and whatever's there. And the scream that tends to come out of the person, I wouldn't say it's an ungodly scream, but it's a very unique sound that comes out. And then you can feel like your whole body comes into itself. It's almost like you come into a new body, because
Mm.
you've been giving yourself permission to express the terror and have it witnessed lovingly. Like there's not anything wrong with you, but you just need to. No one's shown you how to feel terror, especially if like your parents didn't know how to guide you through terror, or if your birthing process was one that was terror filled, like possibly a C, possibly you had your preemie baby, like all these things, or your mother was terrified, right? Take another deep breath. So anyone's listening as well. And so what happens is like when you're in the womb, there is no me and mum. I am mum. So if mum was terrified, the terror just goes straight to me. But you don't know why you're experiencing it, but you've got it. So it just gets trapped in the body when you're born, and then just
Mm.
repeats cyclically and in your life until you can be with terror. Plant medicines can also help you move through terror. It really depends on what plant medicine that you're called to use. But the body won't take you. The body will not go where it's not ready to go. The body will just go to the layer that it's ready for, whatever its bandwidth is capable of.
Well, that's good to know that we can trust in that. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.
I mean, it's very, 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 very rare for somebody to have a psychotic break in that work. Where I find psychotic breaks tend to happen is when somebody is so fragmented, they just have no grip on reality anyway, and or they've had a lot of plant medicine or synthetic medicine journeys, and they haven't integrated. Just keep on back to backing medicine journeys, and they don't be with the wisdom that came from the medicine,
Mm.
and it just like, they have a psychotic break, which isn't a bad thing. Maybe that's part of their journey, but
Mm.
still, it's not a very pleasant experience. Not that I've had one, but it's not a
Mm.
very pleasant experience.
Yeah. I've had plant medicine twice, ayahuasca,
Yeah, great.
and I do feel like I moved through a lot in
Yeah,
those two journeys. And I still feel like I'm integrating the last one, which was over a year ago.
yeah. The mother's a beautiful medicine. I went over to Peru to experience that.
Mm.
That was really a really beautiful. Yeah, she's lovely medicine. Lovely. Actually, there was one night they were doing a ceremony, and I knew I wasn't supposed to be in that ceremony. I had a call and said, John, don't go in that ceremony. Just go to sleep. That particular ceremony was the worst one out of all of them for everybody else. People were seeing demons. They got people wandered away from wherever the campsite was and got lost. And I just knew I wasn't supposed to be in that one. Yeah, it's fun times with plant medicine.
She's the one that I guess chooses what you experience and where you go. And there's always a theme for everyone, I find.
Yeah, there is. There really is. Yeah.
You mentioned the leading pattern,
Yeah.
and there was a video I watched that talks about 5 patterns of people pleasing, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
actually, after that video, I bought this guy here.
Great book.
I haven't started it yet, but it only just came last night, so I'm really excited to get into that.
Great.
And I must say that the pattern that I really identified with, I've been a people pleaser my whole life until very recently. And even now, I have to stop myself and try and be aware because it is a form of manipulation.
Yeah.
Um, and not that I'm judging myself or whatever, but I can see where it's coming from, a survival mode, you know.
Yeah. Total survival.
And I really identified more so with the endurer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not just because I hate being tickled, but I I do a lot of what you were explaining in that pattern, and it makes sense because I was very oppressed. I had parents that were very protective and controlling, and I felt like I couldn't do what I wanted to do.
Mm.
And that I think that's what you explained as the endurer pattern.
Yeah. Thank you. That totally comes into play. I can't
Yeah.
remember what I mentioned in that video, but we have all five in various degrees.
Mm.
I mean, and what occurs for me, like when I see you straight away, do you mind if I tell you
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
see?
go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So first of all, the first defense I see is the rigid pattern, and
Mm.
then secondary is the lever, and then there might be a third of like the merging, and the fourth of the endurer. There's also an aggressive type hidden away in there, which I think I can hear it in your throat. Like there is something that really wants to come out at times. Because I listened to two of your other podcasts before, and I can hear it in your voice. There's an uncertainty. Like, am I allowed to say this? But I
Yes.
can I can hear something that really wants to come out. Like yeah, that's what I hear. So
Mm.
with the rules and like a parental model, it has a lot of rules. Breaking those requires allowing the curiosity and playfulness of a child to come through, and that you're
Mm.
allowed to make mistakes, and that life is messy, and that there are people out there that will hold your hand through the mistakes as you unfurl and reveal your core self.
Mm. Yeah, look, I will admit I do have a fear of saying something that's going to be wrong or offend.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that you picked up on that, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Because you
Yeah.
also pack a punch with like the wisdom that you carry. So when I'm looking at your Instagram, you have poignant notes of wisdom. I can hear the surgical accuracy in what you're saying, but then I can also hear, am I allowed to say this also in there as well? I
Mm.
guess what I'd love from you is to be able to hear both combined and know that what you're saying is penetrative. Not everyone's going to agree with it, but that's the truth that you need to share in that moment.
Mm.
Yeah.
What I find is I feel like because I'm always evolving and I know I have, you know, these personality types that I need to address in the shadow, there's a part of me that feels like, well, that means what you're saying is tainted. So,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Totally. Totally. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm.
And yes, and for someone that starts their inner work journey with that lens, it can make the journey even harder. It like adds like a God mode difficulty onto the game. But when you allow, I think there's a gene key that's about innocence. I can't remember what number it is. Maybe it's three. Can't remember. Maybe it is three. I'm pretty sure it's three. Anyway, about being innocent in the whole thing. When you know and you can be innocent in the journey of speaking to something, then you can give yourself permission to say something that's wrong. Yeah, it is Gene Key 3, Shadow of Chaos and the City of Innocence. But that
Mm.
Gene Key is about through the eyes of a child. So
Mm.
can you live life through eyes of a child and allow that chaos is inherently a bad thing, but when you operate from it in a shadow frequency, it has a more like anti-divinity or less than healthy outcomes. But if you can pivot into the chaos and be like, okay, I'm feeling that terror, I'm feeling that fear. What's my truth? All right, this is what I need to share. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. Some people aren't going to know what to do with it. but I just need to share it.
Mm. Yeah, and that makes me think of the 22nd gene key again, because in that gene key it talks about how people react is on them, but how you respond to their reaction is on you.
Yeah.
And if you are being triggered by their reaction, then there's something in it for you.
Mm.
So the reason why I'm saying that is, who cares if you say something that triggers people? Like, because it's going to get them to look at that and say, why am I triggered? Because if we're really solid within ourselves, no one would really be getting triggered by anything, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And in the context of relationships, which is what I love helping people with,
Yeah.
like you can't emasculate a man who's in his core self. You just
Mm.
can't. You can't do it. Like you could say anything to him, and he might feel the arrow or the bullet or whatever go in, and go, well, it's we're going to keep that in there. Like, thank you, but I don't feel emasculated by that. Yeah, in the context of relationships, I know there's been a tangent of but a woman's never supposed to emasculate a man or say things to a man at some at the polarity level. A man that's in his core strength, you can't emasculate him. You just say something to him and he absorbs it or he doesn't.
Mm. Yeah. I get what you mean by that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. I grew up in quite a religious family, and I find growing up, I was put into a lot of state of fear. And I find a lot of religions tend to do this.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to put down religion, because I think, it does help some people along their path
Yeah.
to a certain degree. I guess I wanted to ask you about your take on religious programming and what you think about all of that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, religion's about geography. Like
Mm.
wherever you grew up, that's the religion that you're going to get. So if it's bound by geography, is it really yours? So when you look at religious programming, like I've got a Quran here, I've got the Bible here, I've got other
Mm.
religious texts on my Kindle. So for me in religious programming, it's where people lose their connection to divinity, the original, like the source language, then they'll look for other things. And the lower the IQ or the lower the general education, people look to superstition and religion for the solutions to their unknown, their question marks of the world.
Mm.
And the leaving pattern injury, the one that's got a lot of terror, is the most susceptible to looking outside of themselves for security, whether it's a government, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a parent, whether it's religious text, whether it's some spiritual bypassing thing, whether it's ascending with some or aliens, right? There'll be something I need, or Lemurians or Palladians or whatever it is, or crystals. Like I need something to keep me safe. Great. I've got anchored some things. But once you take that away, then they're back to the terror again and they need to look for something else until they face the terror.
Wow. It's like holding on to something outside of yourself, because you're trying to avoid that.
Going within. It can be a karmic thing, like you're carrying something from your lineage, like
Mm.
genetically karmically or spiritually karmically. And it could be something that's been installed from the womb where your mum was terrified, either through the birthing process or at some point, and that connection to outside of yourself just wasn't safe. So you're
Mm.
left looping, trying to find this safety outside of yourself.
Mm. Interesting. Then you mentioned you experienced, I think you said an exorcism or something like that when you were 8.
Yep.
It's interesting because I've had these experiences as well when I was young, and it was always something that I was really questioned and was freaked out about, because you see in movies and even in my experience, religion was used to combat, these entities, demons or whatever. But as I'm going along my journey, I'm really just starting to realize how these entities or demons, in a way, are just shadows and aspects of ourselves.
Correct.
But I don't even know how to explain that. Like, how do you explain that?
Yeah, great. Well, there's layers to it, Dee. And so I'm actually really enjoying some works by someone called Josephine McCarthy, and she
Mm,
speaks to this really well. And so when you view things from your religion, like your Christianity perspective, you straight away you're labeling stuff as good as bad. It's either godly or it's satanic. But
yeah.
then when you zoom out even more and you see everything for what it is, demons and or angels can be tools for growth and or support. And when you can see that everything's looking for food, everything's looking for a source of energy that can be your own energetic field. And like in psychology, you might label, like you could call depression is depression. The shaman might call depression a demon or something else. So everybody has archetypal language that they use depending on the sphere of influence that they're looking from. But in the context of possession is actually quite rare. And depending on how you go through an exorcism, um, the doctrine that you use or the technology that you use isn't actually dealing with the core injury of why that thing is there, right? Like if you're changing someone's diet, if you say that someone needs to change their diet and they're still eating gluten or something, it's like, well, you're eating gluten, like you're gluten intolerant, or you've got a wheat sensitivity, or whatever it is. Like, tend to that, then your psoriasis might clear up, or something else might clear up, right? So, always be clearing and always be exercising. Are you tending to the root of the injury, which could be an addiction? It could be some other sexual injury or something. But what's more common is parasites, both physical and energetic parasites, because they spread faster, they operate faster in the collective, and because of technology they can spread faster. So you've got the energetic parasites and you've also got the physical parasites, like in your biome, in your gut. So focusing on demons, sure, or implants or whatever, sure, if you need to go down that path, sure. But what's really there is checking for parasites. It's like what's parasitically making you want to sleep, or what's parasitically putting you in situations where you create an emotional response like anger or a deep sadness that you can't seem to get out of, or even a compulsion to like go to the fridge when you're about to do something uncomfortable, right? Or jump on your phone when you're about to do something uncomfortable because the anxiety pops up or something. It's more parasitical in nature.
Mm. I'm so glad you brought up parasites because I did have a very interesting experience the other night.
Tell me.
So I mentioned I started getting into my gene keys and I read the 22nd gene key and I felt like something shifted in my body. And after reading that, I think it triggered something in me and I felt this like deep rooted anger coming up. And I thought, geez, I want to look at what's coming from this. And there was a theme playing out. I had watched your video on like the enduring patterns and all that. And so I started to journal. I'm like, okay, where's this deep rooted anger coming out? And then I eventually got to the point where it was from dishonoring myself my whole life. And then I had this moment where I could feel my inner child. She just was, yeah, neglected. And then I started to talk to her and say, I'm not going to let you down anymore. Like I've
Mm,
I've got you. You're my number one
mm,
priority. We're not pleasing anyone else. We're going to put you first. Like just something
great.
like that.
Yeah.
And that night when I was sleeping, I woke up suddenly with crackling in my head, in the back of my neck and head area where that area joins. And then I just felt this gush of energy come from my head down my body, and it opened my sinuses. And at first I was like, "Am I having a stroke? What's going on here?" Anyway, in the morning I did a bowel movement, and when I looked, because I always look at my stool, like I'm a naturopath, I like to look at what's going on. You know
What
what I
number
mean?
was it?
It
Crystal,
was
give
it
me.
was it was about a 4 or a
Mm,
3. Anyway, and I could see little things in there, like
mm,
parasites. I saw parasites in my stool, and I thought, whoa, that's really interesting. And that's when I was confirmed with and validated by the fact that parasites are just, I guess, the physical representation of our own, I don't know, entities or shadows or whatever. Does that make sense?
Could be. Yeah, totally. No, I hear that. I think there's going to be more emerging science on this. Like I've got lots of friends who specialize in parasite cleanses, both
Yeah.
energetically and physically. And what you're saying, like that kind of experience makes sense to me. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like once you read that gene key and you had that epiphany and you reparented that inner child, there's no more food for it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, because the pain body can be food for these things, whether it be in the real world or the behind the veil. Like, everything's happening multidimensionally, which is what I like about the gene keys. It's hologenetic. So
Mm.
it acknowledges that we are light slowed down, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
when you make that comparison of like, well, I'm light slowed down, okay, which means that light impacts me and that how I think, feel, speak, and interpret and receive this light can actually have an impact on my genetics. And when you were saying before, as I kept reading the gene keys, more things kept unlocking. Yeah, that'll keep on happening. Like it happens. Like I've listened to so many gene keys. I've listened to the entire, all of them. And even when I go back and listen to an old one, I'm like, how have I not heard that before? And I'll have a little epiphany, and then something in my life will shift. Like I'll get another client, or a client will have a breakthrough, or somebody will reach out to me, or I'll get a payment for something that's completely random, or something will happen in my relationship that's either really high or quite low. But either way, it's when you acknowledge that light's always changing and light's not a constant, and then you realize that transformation's available at whatever you hold your frequency at. Life is different. Life is easy. It
Mm.
just changes your whole outlook.
Yeah. That's so true. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for opening it up.
And I also want to ask you what your thoughts are on curses and hexes, because
Yeah.
that's very disempowering when you think about it. Like, oh, someone can put this thing on me, and what can I do about it? Nothing, and I'm screwed. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a rich tapestry, D, like with
Mm.
curses and hexes. Because sometimes there's a, because you can go to people to get them removed, but then there could be something of why it's been put in place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're moving into a world of sovereignty and being able to take responsibility for yourself, it's about learning your own magical protection.
Mm-hmm.
and and where I see where we're going next, like Sage and these older technologies are going to run out of their efficacy
Mm-hmm.
because the density of the magic that's coming through is shifting. There's more things that are coming through the veil. We're gonna see much more of this. I'm sure the Vatican's going to be releasing even more information about what's going on, or maybe not. But in specifically with hexes and curses, is being able to identify, well, what is it, why is it there, because the terror, if you have terror in you, will panic and then run to all kinds of solutions but miss out, like, why is it there, what am I being cursed for,
Mm.
and is it really a curse, or have I just not looked at whatever this core trauma is, like maybe it is like, am I people pleasing, right, am I doing something that I know I shouldn't be doing? Have I medicated my body to such a state where I can't feel myself anymore? Right? Have I spoken to nature? Like nature has so many solutions for us. If you just go out there and have a conversation, go and have a conversation with a tree. Go and ask the tree, am I cursed? And put your hand on the tree. Can you help me with my curse? Try it. Who knows? Okay. But if you don't feel safe in the world, try and being safe in nature first and then turn to people. Again, to work with hexes and curses, I'd recommend doing it yourself. And you need to find out what's correct for you, because in that journey of discovery, you might find another connection, which might give you another connection to somebody else, which might help you with your life purpose or help you with your relationship or help you with something else. So when you view the world as everything's against me, which is a leaving pattern thing, you're looking for threat detection. It's like a highly sensitive person that are overcharged on their threat, which impacts your central nervous system and your immune system. I'm like mast cell destabilization type stuff, right? Because everything's attacking me. So
You're
when
in
you can,
defense mode.
the defense mode, you walk around in defense mode. So you're more likely to attract a parasite. You're more likely to get hexed and cursed and whatever, because your field is inverted instead of coming from a core self and coming out like a toroid. The toroid's inverted, so it's kind of coming in as opposed to emanating from your God source internally and coming out. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I knew you'd have some really empowering explanation.
I don't know. I don't know where they come from half the time. I'm just going to speak. Yeah, if you ask the right question, I give you the answer. Hmm.
I wanted to also ask you, it's a really big subject now on narcissism,
Yep.
and I have a completely different perspective in the last few days, even on narcissism.
Hmm.
Just by reading the 22nd gene key, I see these people or this personality type, and I want to ask you if it is a personality type or what. But before I get there, I see it as they're actually really big blessings. And when I came to that realization was when I read the 22nd gene key, and it talks about what people do is on them, but how you respond is on you. And that's when I was like, okay, I had that realization. I chose, in every moment that I was dealing with this narcissist, I chose to. And I
Mm.
chose to stay, and I chose to put up with whatever, trauma pattern they were playing out. And the minute I had that realization, I just felt my power completely come back to me. And I was no longer angry at them or resentful. And I just saw them for the gift that they were in my life.
Hmm.
But then I also think they say with narcissism, they're people that never change. There's something wrong with them. They just really lack empathy, and that's it. And I don't like to write people off like that. And I just want to know, what's your take on that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think in the scientific world and the DSM and those kind of ways of categorizing people, that writing a narcissist off because they're a narcissist, or whether it's been clinically diagnosed or pop psychology diagnosed, is incorrect. Like, anybody has the faculty for change, and not everybody will change. And I love that. And I love that journey of grace and graciousness of reading that 22nd and being able to hear that, oh, wait, how I respond. And I think so many people in general struggle with, like, once they find out that their partner was a narcissist, they just stay in that loop and, like, oh, narcissist, narcissist, narcissist. But you can feel the energy surge of, oh, they were a narcissist. Oh, they were this. Oh, they were that. And they may have been. And what were you getting out of the relationship? So maybe
Mm.
you were getting a little bit of love, even if it was a breadcrumb, right? Maybe you were hijacking or piggybacking off their self-worth because they were so confident or whatever it was, or they had an appearance of a higher self-worth than you did, right? And when you can be honest with those things, it changes your relationship with what narcissism is. Because I feel, without, if you don't have a healthy sense of self, that's when you can be easily led astray by propaganda and things that we've seen over the last couple of years, where if you don't know your own internal authority, you look for whatever the other surrogate narcissist is, whether it's a government or an authority body or whatever else it is, right?
That's so true. Yeah. And I remember in one of your videos, you were explaining how those who have low self-worth are more likely to be swayed by authority. And we saw that play out in the last few years.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It makes me think though, because maybe I'm wrong, maybe I've used self-worth as a guise, but I've always felt like I've had self-worth
Mm.
issues throughout my life. It's been a big wound for me. But when it came to all that stuff, I was like, nah, fuck that. What was that playing out? Or could that have been?
Yeah, that's an interesting for you particularly. I don't know. Like, I could hazard some guesses that
Yeah.
maybe it plugged into this I'm never going to be religiously programmed again, and you could feel the pressure on that frequency of that authority. It's like, fuck no, no,
Mm,
no way, not playing that game. Something's under all this. It's not right.
mm,
And or like a lot of us had various kinds of awakenings over that period. Then it could have just been like the soul fragment just activating, like planetary alignment, the earth pressure, the collective, like who knows? But whatever your voice was really important in that moment, right?
Mm,
It activated changes in other people. Like we can all help each other awaken whenever we honor our own truth. Like it just helps activate those little things inside of us that turns those genes on, or turns that
mm,
attitude on, that no, I can do this, I can say this stuff.
mm. I remember feeling so conflicted because I was speaking my truth, but I was offending people. And so that people pleasing part of me was like, oh no. I remember just hating it. But I was like, but I can't. Like I can't not say what I see
Yeah.
playing out here. I remember just really hating it, but feeling like I couldn't hold back. And it was
Yeah.
just this conflict.
Yeah, it's great. It's the perfect amount of dissonance. That's great. And it sounds like it's put a catalyst into that, you know, that there's more there in you, and
Yeah.
it comes out in particular environments,
Yeah,
right?
very true.
Mm.
So there's a term that I've heard through you listening to your videos, and it's body armoring.
Hmm.
I've never heard of that before. Can you
Mm.
explain what that is to people who haven't heard of it?
Yeah, sure. So it's a term that came from Wilhelm Reich,
Mm-hmm.
and then developed by Alexander Lowen again, where as you age and as you become more human, more in your flesh suit, whenever there's trauma, your body defends itself by building musculature spasticity, which it makes your muscles harder.
Mm.
And there's hardened muscles, and then there's also adipose tissue, which is also another form of armoring, which is fat. So in particular with core energetics, which is one of the modalities I'm trained in, is that I look at a body and I see where you are the most armored. And so if I was to work on you, D, I would go for the jaw, I'd go for the back of the neck, I'd go for the shoulder blades. I may or may not do the calves. It really depends on how you work on this upper body piece. And then I work further down your body.
Mm.
But I can look at someone quite quickly, anybody, in fact, and just say, okay, they've got armoring there, they've got armoring here, cool, that. And armoring can be worked on by deep body work and soft body work, and sometimes just even a hand on their body. I had a previous client who, she was an endurer, and I just knew I needed to hold my hand over her stomach, just right over her navel. And I stood there for about an hour and a half while she spoke, and just got everything out of her, all the stuff that she was complaining about her life, like all the inner work that she's done, and the life that she's not been able to live, and how her sister has a better life than her, and how the world sucks, and what happened over the lockdown should never have happened, and all this kind of stuff. And just had my hand there, and then she went through phases of weeping and anger and all of it. But that's all I needed to do, was just hold my hand on that one spot. So everybody's armoring is unique, but that's what armoring is. It's a defense against the world based on your trauma survival pattern.
Mm. That's so interesting. In my mother's family, they have like a specific posture where
Mm-hmm.
they tend to arch. And I noticed that I have developed a bit of this, and it
Great.
really bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
And before I was conscious of how the body stores trauma, I was seeing a functional patterns trainer.
Oh, great. Functional patterns. Great.
I mean, it was great, but I was not progressing because when I was trying to put my posture in the right, like train my muscles and stuff, I literally felt like I was gonna vomit and something was resisting. And
Yeah.
it was, I think, the eighth session where I was like, I just can't do this anymore. There's something else I need to address first.
Yeah. I've got something for you.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with resentment?
I must say that I, when I'm hurt by someone, I do hold that very
So
deeply.
this is in your family line. So they don't, because if it's all been rigid rules, there can be a denial of expressing the resentment. So
Okay.
resentment appears in the body as a collapsed, it's like almost like a ridge on the
Yeah.
back, like a hump, a hump. So like, whole families can hold in resentment for generations, and all it takes is one to be able to express it either ancestrally or this timelinely. But yeah, it's usually resentment, and resentment
Mm.
can feel like poison coming out of the body, and maybe you do need to vomit. Like sometimes a client will need to vomit in a session, like they access such a deep grief and rage that they vomit. Like I've had guys do regressive breath work with me, and they tap into some old like circumcision injury or something, and they throw up. I have a bucket right next to them. They just throw up. Or if they can feel a gag coming on, I go, cool, go to the toilet and just allow yourself to experience whatever the gag is, including putting your fingers in your mouth. Allow the body to actually have the reflex, and then it can access grief and then relief on the other side of it. But if you're a child that wasn't allowed to vomit, or you were shamed for vomiting, which can happen at a very like pre-verbal level, where like a parent looks at you in disgust because you threw up, but you're just being a child, right?
Mm.
You spat up all your milk. Ugh, you threw up all over me. It smells horrible. But it's me, mummy. It's just me. I'm not
Mm.
wrong. So that can be installed inside the child's biology, whether consciously or unconsciously. So resentment and a bit of vomiting sort you right out. But body work wise, if you've got someone that does body work on you, I'd recommend them with the intention of working your shoulders and that upper part to be able. It needs to be vocalized. D for you, it's
Mm-hmm.
got to come out the throat. Is the
Mm.
sound whatever it is like?
Mm.
It's got to come out the throat. Otherwise, it re-internalizes and it'll just move somewhere else. Like could be moved to your hips or could move into your
Mm.
sinuses or somewhere else, but it's got to come out the throat.
Is it always the thing that you least want it to be?
With me, usually it is. If you come across my path, I'll bring the Pluto. I'll bring exactly the thing you don't want to have a look at or experience.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Based on all of that,
Mhm.
okay, and I remember listening to one of your videos, you mentioned that all these energetic healings and Reikis and this and that, they all lack that embodiment and physical release from the body. So for me to work with that, I need to have that somatic psychotherapy stuff done. Is that
Yes and no.
okay?
Like even with reparenting that inner child, like the journaling, like being able to talk your journal out. Like how many journals have you got?
I only just started the journaling thing.
All right, great, great, great. Because when I'm talking to someone who's journaling, it's like I'm on my eighth journal. I'm like, oh my god. So you need to speak, like
Okay.
speak, even recording your voice, knowing what your voice sounds like.
Mm,
Um, it'll start to open up this throat channel and give you a little bit more confidence in being able to hear your own voice. What I'd also recommend is checking out your human design, finding out what energy type that you are: projector, reflector, generator, mangen. Mangen's actually a subset, but a generator or a manifester. All of those types have a particular way of using their throat.
mm.
And
I'm a
what
manifestor generator.
Oh yeah, Mangen, great, cool, cool. So
What do I
listening
do?
to your so you do have a connected throat, which means that you also need to listen to your own internal authority of the gut, of the uh-huh and the uh-uh. So
Mm,
if someone's asking you a question and it's not phrased in a yes or a no, it can confuse your internal authority.
mm.
And you can also test yourself as well. For example, I'll do some tests on you. You open to some tests?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, great. So answer back with a huh, which is a yes, or a which is no, and make sure it comes from the gut.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is your name D?
Nah. It's well,
Great.
it's because it's not.
It's okay. I know. I know. It's a perfect question to ask you. Okay, because you could have people pleased and gone, or you could have gone. Actually, it's not. That's not my real name. That's an abbreviated form of my name. Right. Perfect.
Mm.
Correct answer. Okay. Is your car black?
Huh?
Great. Do you like rain?
Ah.
Right. Do you like the sun?
Uh-huh.
Um, do you like chicken?
Uh, I'm conflicted because I like it, but I don't know if it's right.
Great, perfect. That's all the questions I need to ask you. So you can feel when there's something is correct and incorrect, and then you're unsure about, right?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So that's one of the first things I help someone learn is if they don't know their human design, go and practice their strategy and their authority. And then from there, you have a metric that you can gauge your core self from. It's an experiment. Just go and try it. Like, give
Mm,
it a shot. But as far as embodiment goes, knowing your own internal authority will really help you. Otherwise, with the energy work wise, just shifting energy around. And if the
mm,
body isn't aligned, the energy just defaults back to the body. Same
mhm,
thing with removing entities or implants or whatever it is. It's like if the body, if you're not addressing the core trauma injury, the energy, the energy mirrors what the body is formed
mm,
from. Because the
mhm,
body in this plane, it's the body. So if the body's out of integrity or has got armouring or something on it that's not correct, the energy will just reflect that. No matter
mm,
how much energy work you try and quantum work or whatever it is you try and manipulate, it's like, no, the body's the default. You can't escape it.
mm. Do you find that a lot of what you're experiencing or we're experiencing is generational, or
Yeah.
it's our own stuff, and then we need to go back generationally once?
Both. It's all of it. It's all of
Uh,
it. So I've got
yeah.
clients that are dealing with like 22 plus generations worth of trauma. It's almost 500 years worth. I've got clients who are just dealing with stuff this lifetime. Everyone's unique, D. Like everyone's on their own. Like people who have an older soul age seem to have more options for how they want to live their life. People who are genetically younger, but then also have a deep soul maturity,
Mm,
really struggle with, well, how can I can't find any friends my own age that want to talk about the stuff that I want to talk about. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, great. I hear
mm.
you. You've got that wisdom in that body. It's a hard one. It can be really lonely, but you'll find the right people if you're open to it.
Do you feel like eventually you get to a point where there's like you've cleared all your stuff in this lifetime and all your generational stuff, and you're just this clean vessel walking around? Like, is that possible?
Yeah, it is. It is. It is.
Okay.
And the inner work, the how the inner work occurs for you changes,
Mm,
and it tends to show up in relationships and then in business,
mm,
or orders of that, orders of different magnitude of that. So you have the solo journey and trying to fit in, and am I doing what the right thing is? And then
mm,
relationships will bring up another layer. And then depending on how that relationship progresses, then maybe if you had kids, another layer. And then business, if you run your own business, there's all just the style of journey, the style of inner work journey changes because you can connect to, when you become that vessel, you connect to the divine source, you plug into the divine source, and your fear of the unknown shifts into the excitement of the adventure.
mm,
And like, cool, how am I gonna solve this? Or what's this for me? Who do I need to speak to? What medicines do I need to try next? This keeps reoccurring for me. I wonder what it is. I wonder, is this immutable? Is this like part of my chiron or my life's path or whatever it is? And it's going to
mm,
keep on reoccurring. I just need to acknowledge it and love it for what it is. Or is this something that I can shift and transform so I never need to look at it again?
mm.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
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 great.
it's cool.
Awesome.
And what's family constellations? What's that about?
So, family constellations is a technology
Mm,
where you can revisit your family of origin dynamics. It's hot in Europe. It's a hot technology in Europe. It's also very, very woo-woo,
mm,
where it's an advanced form of psychodrama where you reenact or recreate scenarios that have come from your family of origin. I use them a little bit differently. I use the technology of family constellations, but simplify it because they can take ages, where you have people that are actors, and then you have a facilitator, and
mm,
then you have the captain of the constellation, which it's their constellation. So you're looking at their life. And what you do is the actors, you assign roles to the actors that mimic what the captain's going through, like a struggle. And then the actors might not know the captain at all, but somehow when they start acting, it mirrors exactly what the scenario is going on in their life. And it's quite profound. You really need to see it. It's experiential therapy. And the captain can have all kinds of experiences looking at their life playing out. It's really hard to describe a play. It's like trying to describe Shakespeare, but they can have all kinds of visceral reactions and see that their life unfolding or part of their life that's been denying. And then the facilitator can add things or remove things or attempt to solve the constellation, whatever the dilemma that's going on or the conflict is that's going on in the constellation. And the person will have a real life, the captain will have a real life transformation. And so will the actors as well, because they're embodying something that belongs to the captain, but is also a part of the collective. Yeah. Going deeper into the technology of family constellations, like it plugs into the morphogenetic field and some other collective unconscious aspects. But it's a fascinating technology if you get an opportunity to do it. I think there's a guy in there's a guy in Bondi, I think, that does it. But for me, I do a different type of constellation where I don't need to use the family members specifically. I just find out what your issue is and then break up the issue into actors and do it that way. I find it's much more efficient. Otherwise, you just get looping into trying to understand your family of origin story, which can be mostly irrelevant for most people.
Mm. Thanks for explaining that. That's so interesting. Never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's a great technology. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you offer a lot of free content. Like you have your YouTube channel, you have your Instagram, Facebook page as well.
Mhm.
I know when it comes to working one-on-one with you, people really need to be ready. Like
Yeah.
it's just not simple as I just want to see him just to see how things go type of thing. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not it's my try before you buy is all my free content.
Mm,
Like you will know when you're ready to work with me. Otherwise, yeah, I prefer that people don't reach out to me until they are ready. Like I will bring elements of a tower into your life where you might need to change jobs. You might need to change, you might quit a job, leave a relationship, change cities, change countries, even. So if you're not ready for that level of depth, then it's okay. Just stick with my
mm,
free stuff. But if you've tried everything and you're still stuck, then maybe it's time to reach out to me.
mm,
I'm usually the last resort for someone when someone comes to me. It's like, John, I can't shift this. I can't seem to get my relationships to work. I can't seem to move my life. I'm just continuously stuck. I've tried all these other things. It's like, great, cool. Let's have a conversation.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'll read this book. I'll keep doing my thing. And if I haven't vomited, I'm reaching out.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it, D. I'm here for
Uh,
it. I've also got an entry level group that I'm starting up on school. So it's
mhm.
much cheaper if someone doesn't want to work with me one on one. I was building a community from scratch. The experiment for me is how to do that. So you can find that on Facebook, John Kyle Wallis. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. And actually, before I move on, when you talk about how changes will be made, working with you, I can see how that makes a lot of sense because often people would go see a healer or have certain healing done, but then they just go back to the same life and the
Correct.
same patterns.
Correct.
And it's like, but what have you actually embodied? What have you changed? What part of you has expanded because it's not being reflected in the way you're living? That really makes sense to me that you have to do shit, you have to change things, you have to live aligned within your truth or whatever. So I really get that part of
Mm.
it. And some people might find that a bit harsh, but I understand it
It's
totally.
it's it's the reality, D. And
Yeah.
for me, I don't want to take your money if you're not willing to do the change. Like it's exhausting for me because I'm trying to pull you over the line and convince you that you need to change. So I just prefer that you present to me, all right, John, I'm willing to change. Great. Let's go
Mm,
deep. Let's find out what's there for you and let's change your life. Let's create an enriching life for you. Otherwise, if you want to go back to the same environment, go back to the same thing, you're just making like fine tuning tweaks to stay the same. There's plenty of other people that you can pay
mm,
that will keep you in that space. I'm not about that. I'm about you want an enriching life, you're going to need to change some things,
mm. If it, in another way of looking at it is like they're just giving you the tolerance to continue your life.
right?
Sounds
Right?
bad.
Yeah, right. So I mean, like that, and D, like that book is a great book to start with.
Yeah.
Perfect book to start with. Really, really easy read, and has got
Mm,
exercises in there which will at least uncover
mm,
what patterns are playing out for you. And these are different. My video, like these are different from like other personality tests. They're not the same
mm,
as DISC or
mm,
Myers-Briggs or Enneagram. This is about your body's mirroring
mm,
of your trauma. All the other ones can change. Like my Myers-Briggs has changed since I started doing this work.
mm,
That you can change your those big five, those other personality tests when you start looking at your trauma.
mm. What I find interesting is when I was listening to what you were explaining the different types, I identified with one, but you could see that that was like a layer of a few others. So that tells me I still need to really connect with myself.
Yeah, and also, do you like I've got something else for you if you're open to it.
I'm open to it.
Yeah, great. Is being gentle with yourself.
Okay.
Like, be really gentle with yourself. I think on the inner work journey, we can get stuck on the grindstone of the, I need to be better. I need to fix myself. You've actually come a long way, D. I can feel energetically you've actually come a long way. And also being able to celebrate how far you've come.
Mm,
And it's like, wow, actually, fuck, when I look back, like to escape the gravity of a family system that's like quite religious is an achievement. It's
mm,
an achievement that's worth celebrating. I'm like, wow, I've done that. So one of the first things I explain to my clients is celebrate your wins because the rigid injury does not know how to celebrate. They're
mm,
like, next achievement, great, cool, done that healing. Next one, great. Tony Robbins is next, fantastic. Let's go and do that, right? Or whatever it is, quantum this or NLP that or tapping this. It's like, oh, next thing, great. No, celebrate that you've actually you've made some ground and really be able to honor yourself with some grace that you actually went there, like you actually went there and felt it and did the thing.
yeah, that's so me. I don't, I don't, I'm like, what's next? I, you have, you have analyzed me to a T. You're
Correct.
good. You're good.
I am. Thank you.
And so when it comes to working with you,
Mhm.
John, is some of it just a one-off to get a certain release, or does it become like a process where
It depending on what you want to work with me with, like what package you go into, there's some of it involves body work.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's the body work is like straight up, like I need to get on your body to free up your body so you can deal with the upgrades and the changes that are coming next. Sometimes the body work comes later because the armoring around the skull and the intellect is so thick that I need to gently walk you down to the path of now your body is ready because your brain has let go of control. But some of it's body work and some of it's not. Now, a lot of the work that I can do now, I can do on virtually, but then sometimes I do need to get hands on, get in your face, be around you. Sometimes I go to your house and I will use your house as leverage for the energetic environment. The house mirrors the body. So there'll be places in your house where you feel like the most you and the least you. And I use that as leverage to take you back into your body. It's like a gestalt technique where I break you up into the parts of you that's super confident and the parts of you that's super insecure or the part of you that's afraid to come out of your shell. But I do that in your house. And the house works really well because when I go, you're going to still be in the house. So if I change you in the energetic structure of the house, the energy of the house shifts as well. So you're constantly reminded of the new you in your house, if that makes sense.
yeah, that's really powerful.
So yeah,
Wow. I love all of that. Like I'm so happy we've had this
yeah, me
conversation.
too.
I really enjoyed it. I'll be honest, it went in places I didn't expect, but I'm happy it did.
Me too. They're my favorite conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll share all your channels and website or
Sure.
pages and stuff for people to start delving into. But I guess it's good that, people know that they first start doing what they can, listening to your free content. And then if they feel they need that extra support and they're ready to confront and make changes, then they can reach out to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, John. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for your presence and your exceptional questions, like just surgical, like correct questions. I love a good question. Like it's yeah, you had great questions.
Thank you, John. And I probably will have you on again. I really enjoyed this. And
I
if
love that. You know where to find me.